sentence investigation and report, a victim impact statement, and a psychological evaluation. Those reports have been completed. The state has had an opportunity to review those reports and is ready to proceed with sentencing. There are 4 days of jail time credit. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Wagoner?
Thank you, Your Honor. We're asking the court to go along with the joint recommendation of community control. It's sort of a unique case. What we had here was sort of a perfect storm of PTSD trigger, potential diabetic episode, alcohol that was stronger than I think she realized, and just some mental health issues all coming together to cause her to clearly be triggered. She certainly is not in her character. Typically, a case like this, we would see someone when we get to this stage in life having some sort of violent history or any kind of history, drug history, anything like that. We have nothing. She doesn't have a record. She doesn't have a violent past. So this is clearly a one-off situation and doesn't speak to her character at all. She's very regretful of it. As soon as it happened, she immediately started taking steps to figure out what's going on. She went to Crossroads. She's going to another counseling. We've submitted counseling records that she's going regularly to just try to figure out what happened, make sure it doesn't happen again. She hasn't drank since. She's changing her life to make sure that she addresses whatever underlying thing happened here. She has a very strong support network. You can see that the courtroom is full of family and friends here on her behalf. She's working. We would also ask that if the court is inclined to impose some sort of jail time, that the court consider either house arrest or work release. She is working. She works for Hallmark doing merchandising all around Paynesville. She's strong in her faith. She goes to church. This was completely out of her character, and we'd ask the court to allow her to keep addressing whatever underlying issues led to this. And I know that she's prepared a short statement as well that she would like to read.
All right. Ms. Clark, what do you want to tell me before I impose sentence?
Your Honor, I come before you today full of remorse and regret for my actions on December 27th. That evening, I made some bad decisions that have affected the lives of many. Since then, I have apologized to Mark, my family, and loved ones for the toll it has taken on their lives. Although I cannot possibly rectify the situation, I have strived to learn from it by getting a psychological evaluation and attending weekly therapy sessions. I no longer drink. I continue to attend church and receive counsel from my pastor. I want to make sure that I do not put myself or anyone else in this situation ever again. I am a 60-year-old woman with no criminal record until now. I have the strong support of family and friends in place, many of whom are with me today. I truly am a good person who had a tragic night. Judge O'Donnell, I earnestly ask that you grant the prosecuting attorney's recommendation of probation only. I am a woman of my word, and I promise you that I will never come before you with any violations. These charges are serious and will be my first, last, and only. Thank you, Your Honor.
So what do you recall happening that night?
It's a lot of a blur, Your Honor. I'm not making excuses. I did it. But I had low blood sugar, and I became somebody that I did not recognize. And I don't know what happened other than I was very fearful. I just didn't wake up one day and lose my mind. I was fearful, and I'm not sure why, and I wish I had an answer. I wish I knew, and that's why I go to therapy, to try to figure it out.
Well, that's good. The problem is that there is no indication in your past as to why something like this happened, and this is, I would imagine that he was within a couple inches, if that, of his death, and a few minutes of his death, based on what the emergency squad folks described as being very, very pale once they got there. And the lethargic and blood everywhere. So the fact that you don't have anything in the past that indicates this is kind of a double-edged sword, because you did it. And it doesn't, the only way it gets more serious than this is if he's dead. And that wasn't too far off in the distance. So it's good that you're trying to figure out answers to it. Okay, but as I understand it, you guys had resided together for a while, and then were residing apart at the time of this, although still seeing each other on a regular basis. So if there were something to fear, I don't know where I objectively find that in these reports.
Can I clarify that?
Go ahead.
When she says she's fearful, she's not blaming the victim for causing her fear. It's more of, her anxiety, her PTSD put that state of mind into her, more of a amorphous sort of general fearfulness, if that makes any
Okay.
sense. I just want to make clear she's not blaming him for doing anything.
Okay. There appears no reasonable explanation as to why this occurred, okay, which you indicate on the one hand you're trying to figure out why, and Mr. Bangeter views that as something that indicates it won't happen again, but there's the other side of that, that if it never happened before, why would I assume it's never going to happen again? Ms. Himmeline?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think it's important for the court to consider everything that happened that evening on December 27, 2024. The defendant and the victim were at his home having a date night and drinking. She was highly intoxicated, the defendant, and wanted to drive home. All the victim wanted to do was to keep her safe and not let her drive. They had a conversation about this in the kitchen where he thought they had agreed that she wasn't going to drive home, they were going to go to bed, and everything was going to be fine. But it wasn't. As the victim turned to go upstairs to the bedroom, the defendant grabbed a knife out of a drawer, walked up behind him, and stabbed him in the back with such force that she punctured his lung. And when he turned around after she stabbed him, she sliced his arm open, causing a deep laceration. State's sentencing exhibits that have been provided to the court, 1A through 1O, depict the knife, the scene, the blood, and Mark's injuries. Mark wasn't able to call 911 himself because he was bleeding so profusely. He had to ask the defendant to call for him because she didn't do so on her own. And then when she called 911, her level of callousness about his injuries was disturbing. And I'm quoting her, she tells the dispatcher, "He's lying on the floor like a big pussy. He's on the kitchen floor pretending it's like really ridiculously bad." He wasn't pretending, Your Honor, it was bad. He was bleeding out on the floor. And as you alluded to already, when the Menor Police Department arrived and the fire department arrived, he was pale, lethargic, his speech was slow. He was bleeding so profusely that the Menor Police Department had to apply a chest seal to his back and a bandage to his arm to stop the loss of blood before EMS even got there. The defendant had a strong odor of alcohol coming from her breath. She was belligerent and uncooperative with the police, the fire department, and the nurses at the hospital. Her behavior was indicative of someone who was highly intoxicated, not of someone having a diabetic episode, as she suggests. In fact, her blood sugar was tested at the hospital, and it was within the normal range. When she was being photographed at the hospital, an officer asked about a possible injury on her mouth, and she stated that it was just a cold sore, but then further went on to say, quote, "unless it would help for me to say he hit me," end quote. That night, she told the police that Mark didn't have any weapons. She never articulated anything that he did to her or said to her to cause any fear, and she had no injuries other than the injury that was self-inflicted after she stabbed him. When I've spoken with the victim, Mark, in this case, he vehemently denied attacking or provoking this in any way. He described just that, what I said earlier, a conversation in the kitchen where he just wanted to keep the victim safe from driving. Additionally, he was stabbed in the back. indicating that the defendant was the aggressor. The defendant says that she takes responsibility for her poor choices, but she tells probation and Lake Giago when she went through her interview process that it was the diabetic episode that caused this. Again, there was no evidence that she was suffering from any diabetic episode. She also tells probation and Lake Giaga that this was a result of a physical and sexual assault, but there's no details provided whatsoever because she was just upset and drunk and she stabbed Mark in the back. This was a serious, horrific, and unprovoked attack. And while this might be her first criminal offense, it is the nature of the offense is violent and it caused serious physical harm to Mark. The defendant's conduct cannot go unpunished, and the state does recommend probation, community control in this case. However, the agreement is a little bit different than what the defendant stated to you earlier. The state agreed not to request prison in this case. The state is asking that the court impose, as part of community control sanctions, a sentence of local jail time. Thank you, Your Honor.
So one of the things that doesn't make sense to me in light of what has been said here this morning is what you told the evaluator, Ms. Friend, when you spoke with her. You told her that you weren't sure of all the events of the evening, but you do remember feeling more unsafe than I had in the past with him. I remember he was trying to hurt me, but not sure what happened after until the police were there giving you some juice and to help with your sugar. So what's that all about? Because you told me, well, Mr. Bangeter indicated to me that you weren't blaming him for anything, but you indicated to Ms. Friend that you were sort of putting that on him.
I do not wish to blame Mark.
You said that, but I'm asking you why you told Ms. Friend that.
Because Mark and I had a unique sexual relationship, and this is embarrassing because my father and family are here, and it had been escalating, and I recall choking being involved, choking where it was pressed here, and that wouldn't leave a mark. And I recall the relationship had escalated, and I didn't enjoy things being done to me, but Mark enjoys things being done to him.
Okay.
And I just don't.
So if you guys lived together for a period of time and then didn't live together and were seeing each other probably 3 times a week, I guess that begs the question, why, if that were the case?
I don't know if we were seeing each other as often. We moved out. He moved out. It was a mutual understanding for faith-based reasons. And we had only been back together since around his birthday in November. And I don't know how often we were seeing each other. We were socially dating and dating others.
Well, these 2 explanations don't jive. And then I get right back to where I started with the seriousness of what happened and the lack of indicator in the past that it would happen. And then I can't simply discount the fact that it's just not something that'll ever happen again. I mean, that would be a silly assumption on my part. And it's silly to assume that it's going to happen again, because I don't know, and apparently you don't know.
I know that Mark and I will not be seeing each other.
Okay, that's fine.
And I know Mark is not the victim, or not, Mark is not on trial, but I do have photos from an incident that happened in my home in Menor on the Lake, where I did have bruising.
And if that were the case, then
Why am I with him?
right.
There are a lot of studies, and I'm not a psychological expert, but I had a lot of things going on in my life, Your Honor. I had the loss of a husband. I was a widow. I was mentally, I'm a strong person, but there's cases where women continue to go back to the abuser. Not as much physical, but mental. And I don't know. I am not an expert in that field.
Can I say something, Your Honor? As I'm hearing it, I think it does make sense, and it is consistent. I mean, you know, whatever this consensual behavior that they engaged in, I mean, it still has a mental and psychological effect and could have repercussions. And if that's what's triggering the PTSD, the emotional issues, the loss of the husband, if that's, regardless of whether it was consensual or not, you can still come out of that feeling unsafe, feeling insecure, that sort of thing. So I think it does kind of all jive together.
Well, and I suppose that's probably what leads to the joint recommendation of community control. Right? That and the lack of a record. Anything else that either of you would like to say, Mr. Banger?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Ms. Hemline, anything further you would like to say?
No, Your Honor.
All right, I've reviewed the pre-sentence report and the psychological evaluation, as well as the victim impact statement. I've considered what counsel has said, what Ms. Clark has said. I've considered all the provisions in 29, 29, 11, 12, and 13. And I will accept the joint recommendation and find that the presumption for prison is overcome. And I will place you on community control for a period of 3 years. I'm going to sentence you to 94 days in the jail with credit for 4, and you'll be able to be granted work release. You'll have to provide a schedule, a weekly schedule to the Sheriff's Department so you can get out, go to work for, and you'll be released 1/2 hour before your work starts and have to be returned 1/2 hour later. You're to have no drugs or alcohol, and you'll be screened. You continue your psychiatric treatment with Crossroads and follow all their recommendations. You're to go to only one doctor and one dentist and one pharmacy for any prescription medication. You're to take your medication only as it's prescribed. And you're going to sign releases so probation can get your records whenever needed. You have no contact with the victim. And you're going to pay the cost and supervision fees associated with this case. Ms. Canas, any other terms that you feel are applicable?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
You understand the terms?
Yes, Your Honor.
If you violate the terms, the state will file a motion to terminate your community control, and if it finds you violated, you face up to a definite maximum of 8 years in prison, up to an indefinite maximum of 12 years. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
So like I indicated to you, I hope you can figure out exactly what happened and why it happened, so you're not back here again. Anything else, Ms. Himalayan?
Your Honor, the state would move to dismiss the remaining count of the indictment.
Remaining count is dismissed. Anything else, Mr. Banger?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, we're adjourned.
All right.